Hello everyone and welcome to the Healthy Mind Show. Today we'll be focusing on anxiety. We'll be discussing the symptoms and how to treat the condition. Anxiety affects more than 8 million people in the UK alone. The number has been known to rise by approximately 6.6% year on year. All statistics about anxiety will be available on our website www.healthymindshow.com. On today's show, we will have Carmel Mullen-Hartley from Open Door Counselling in the studio with us. We'll be discussing how to help cope with anxiety and home remedies you can do to help yourself or a loved one with the condition. If you would like to ask her a question, then please tweet at us at healthy_show. We also spoke to singer-songwriter EMIKA about how she dedicated a whole new album to mental health awareness, especially anxiety. Well, that's coming up later on in the show. For now though, we have 20-year-old Laura who suffers from anxiety. Thank you, Laura, for coming on the show. Could you please tell us how you cope with the anxiety?
How I cope now?
Yeah, how do you cope now?
I try and listen to music, like relax myself, or speaking to my friends, my family, quite supportive. And yeah, they're the main ways I deal with it, or I try and avoid putting myself in situations of anxiety to start with. So if I know there's going to be a really busy train, I'll just get the one before or a couple before, so I know it's not going to be that bad.
Well, I know it's hard for you to come in the studio today and talk about your anxiety, and for those of you at home, we have a little video to show you about how Laura deals with it and her story.
My name's Laura and I'm 20. First realised I had anxiety around the middle of high school. The symptoms involved feeling uneasy, uncomfortable, worrying about situations before they even happen, but just everyday things like getting on a crowded train, or I don't know, being unnecessarily overly anxious about exams, deadlines, social situations, just a whole range of things, to be honest. The way I try and cope with it is by trying to avoid those situations if I can. So I don't know, just crowded trains, I just try and leave a bit earlier so I'm not rushing as much, try and get a seat or whatever. I try and listen to music, I feel like that helps. If I'm walking somewhere, something which I'm stressing about or have been stressing about, put my earphones in, or I talk to my friends on the way there just to try and distract from thinking about whatever it is that's stressing me out, just to distract, I guess. And then when it gets to the actual situation, I don't know, injections or blood tests are a big thing as well. I just try and not think about it until maybe a couple of hours before, so at least I'm not stressing as much weeks leading up to it. So yeah, and I think breathing exercises help quite a lot as well. So.
Well, thank you for that video. That was really informative. Well, now joining us in the studio, we have Carmel, who is a Chief Executive of Open Door Counselling. How are you doing? Thank you so much for coming in today.
I'm good, thank you, and it's really good to be here as well and join you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to ask, how long have you been doing counselling sessions?
Okay, I've been working as a counsellor for over 27 years now, in the same organisation at Open Door, and I started there as a volunteer 27 years ago.
Oh wow, so how did you, from volunteering, how did you become, an actual counsellor to help people?
I did lots of training within the service, and then I did external training as well at university, colleges, to get my appropriate qualifications to practice as a counsellor, and then I became accredited by BACP, which is the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. So that's quite important because that's to meet ethical standards as a practitioner as well. And the service I work for is also an accredited service.
So, question to both of you, I just wanted to ask to open up the discussion. what anxiety both means to you. So obviously you have talked to patients who deals with anxiety, and you've also got it, so I just wanted to know how you both see anxiety.
Okay, I guess for me, we work with a whole range of mental health problems, of which anxiety is one of them. There are many others like depression, self-harming, eating disorders. And I guess for me, seeing someone who's experiencing anxiety, they're struggling to cope in life. They have difficulty focusing on things, probably not sleeping very well, maybe not eating very well, or the opposite of that, actually eating quite a lot. And it's really important to try and sort of get early intervention, so this is caught at a really early stage, because if it's left and people don't get the appropriate support, whatever that is for them, then those problems escalate and become even harder to kind of find a way through.
So what about you, Laura? How do you view anxiety?
To be honest, it just makes life quite a bit more difficult. Like with everyday situations and with important things as well that come up, it just makes them, like some things which you should be looking forward to, you're actually anxious about because of, like, I don't know, social circumstances or getting there, or just worrying about little things. So,
what kind of home remedies would you suggest to the audience to do to help cope with it?
Do you want to?
Personally, I just try and distract myself from it by talking to my friends, just, I don't know, playing a game on my phone, going to get a snack, sometimes just having a nap, and then just doing something which will help try and make you feel more relaxed. Or sometimes if it's something really bothering me, then I think about what the situation is, and then how important it is, whether I actually, like, it depends what it is. Like if it's an event or a piece of work I have to do, I'm like, is it really that important? If I'm like, well, not really, then, like, I had to do a presentation for uni a couple months ago, and it was in front of the class and it was by myself, and I just thought about it. I was like, is it going to count towards my grade? No. So, and that took a lot of the stress away, just trying to, like, look at the situation and just, I don't know, try and evaluate it and just, yeah.
So how about you?
I think it's really important, if anyone, and I'm sure all of us here have suffered some kind of level of anxiety at some point, I think it's so important not to be too hard on ourselves. And just listening to you speaking then, I was thinking about that idea, even the smallest things in life when you're suffering anxiety can suddenly become really insurmountable, can't they?
Yeah.
And things like that you normally wouldn't worry about at all become huge. So I think not being hard on yourself is really important. Reaching out to other people as well, and recognising that there is support and there is help there, and that can be a friend, it can be a member of your family, it can be things like listening to music, going for walks, things that help your mental and physical health, because mental and physical health are so closely entwined that you can't separate them really. So it's important that we do things that support both of those. But clearly, because of the profession I'm in, talking therapy is a really important one, I believe. I know it's hard to find, it's hard sometimes to find the right therapist, but being able to sit with someone who hopefully isn't going to judge you, who's going to listen to you and help you explore where the anxiety is coming from. And because we feel anxious for a reason. It may be something that's happening currently, it may be something that's happened in the past. And it's really important, the therapy we do is sort of to help someone to dig down and look at those things that may have caused them to feel the way they are at the moment. Because it's not just that anxiety, it's what's caused the anxiety in the first place.
We had a couple of tweets in, and one of them was directed towards you, and I just wanted to ask, how do you cope with anxiety with schoolwork? So it could be uni work or high school work. How do you cope with it, basically?
When a young person comes to us with those anxieties, was that the question? How do they cope?
Basically, yeah. So the person asked on Twitter, how do you cope with anxiety with schoolwork?
Okay. I mean, that's a very, very difficult one, because clearly if the anxiety's there, it's harder to focus on your work, it's harder to study, it's harder to do what you need or feel you want to do. So I think if we look at it from the other side, it's about getting the help and the support to find out why you're anxious in the first place, to help reduce that anxiety. Because if you're feeling really anxious and struggling, you can't focus on anything. It's almost impossible to meet targets in school, college or university. So I think it's about beginning to recognise when you're starting to feel anxious what help you need to enable you to cope with work, whether it be work at uni or college. So it's getting the help to make sense of that, why you're anxious. Because if you don't get that, the anxiety just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
And therefore it becomes even harder to do what you feel you want to do. And then of course outside pressures build up, and teachers and lecturers are sort of piling the pressure on to, not to fall behind, and then the anxiety gets greater if you're not getting the help and support. There is always medication. I'm not really an advocate of medication, but I think sometimes if it gets so bad that you're struggling totally to cope with things and you can't cope with talking therapy, then sometimes maybe medication just sort of takes the edge of it a little bit so that you can manage to talk to someone in therapy about what you're struggling with.
That was the next question I was going to ask for both of you. Is medication better or is talking better? Because obviously you're counselling, and then obviously you deal with it, and I just wanted to know both points of views, like if counselling is the way to go, or is medication, or both. Do you want to come to you first?
I always thought that counselling's better, because I was offered medication year 9, 10, but I just didn't want it because I knew a lot of the problems were my thoughts, and I knew the medication, it wouldn't just automatically solve my problems, if you know what I mean. I get it helps for some people, because if you're that stressed you can't even, as you were saying, you can't even go to a counsellor because you're that nervous and stuff. But I've always preferred to solve my problems by talking about it, and create coping strategies if I ever get them again, to deal with it. So
obviously you think that if talking's not,
I think I would definitely say there is a place for both, but I'd certainly focus on the talking therapy in the first instance. But I think if and I know what it's like in Birmingham in terms of mental health, it's incredibly difficult to get the support that people need at the right time they need it, and that's the biggest part of the problem, because I think we're very aware of the difficulties of mental health, but it's accessing services. Services aren't funded adequately enough, Open Door isn't funded sufficiently, and other services aren't. So if it gets so bad and you can't get the talking therapy, then it may be that you need to have medication. It may be that that's the only thing then available at that point. I'm not advocating it, but it's an individual choice, I think. But what I feel strongly about is that counselling should be available at the time people need it. And the government, everyone needs to be doing something about this to ensure that that support is there for young people and older people as well.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming in today. Any helplines or websites will be on our website. But thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have an interview with EMIKA, talking to us about her latest album and why it is so important.
My name is EMIKA. I'm originally from Milton Keynes. I live in Berlin and I make electronic and classical music. I think that sadness is usually at the core of a lot of... I think sadness is the core of feeling out of balance or suffering or trauma in some way. And I think that on top of sadness comes other emotions like anxiety. Anxiety is kind of the top layer, and then often there's sort of like an earthquake underneath, but we don't really see that part. We just see the surface layer of anxiety, and often you think why do I feel anxious? What's this whole anxiety thing even about? I'm quite like a calm person, you know. But I think anxiety is basically like our natural, sort of like a natural alarm signal that is trying to make you realise that perhaps there's something that you need to take a closer look at, something you need to change with your life or change with your way of thinking. You know, our whole existence in our lives is basically our own personal perspective of the world, you know. And it's possible to change that if you're sort of struggling with life itself or with how you feel. So yeah, I think actually over the years I've come to really appreciate anxiety. I think a lot of people are scared of anxiety itself, like it's something bad, but I think it's actually a very, very useful defense mechanism that we have. Because as soon as you start to have these kind of strong feelings, you know, anxiety is very strong, it doesn't go away, it needs to be addressed, and you can't sort of pacify it. So it's a great opportunity to embrace it and work out what it's trying to tell you. So I actually kind of, that's basically what the album Falling in Love with Sadness is about. It's like falling in love with sadness, with anxiety, with trauma. Like you have to find a way to embrace and love these negative things, because they're actually very useful signs and tools, and it can be a great way to really work out who you are and really go deep into your experience in this lifetime and find a way to evolve and grow. So I'm not fearful of fear anymore. I think it's very helpful.
Well, that's it for today's show. Next show we'll be discussing depression. So any questions you may have about today's mental health condition or any other, please look at our website. And any questions you have right now, you can ask on Twitter, and one of our team will be happy to answer as soon as they can. Any helplines or useful links will be now posted on our website, so go and check it out. Thanks so much to our guests, and thank you for watching. See you next time.